Hello, friends, and welcome to What the Fringe, the podcast dedicated to all things Fringe theater. I'm your host, Lauren Hance. Each week, I visit with a Fringe artist to hear all about their endeavors and gain insight into their process. This week, I'm visiting with Courtney Bassett of Half Trick Theatre. She has 3 shows this year that she is presenting at Edinburgh Fringe. Waiting for Wonka. 15 years after the competition that ruined their lives, 5 damaged adults try to understand what happened to them as children. Veruca, Augustus, Violet, and Mike are all grown up and haunted by what happened to them on that fabled factory tour. Watched over by their new landlord, Charlie, they must grapple with the consequences of their childhood trauma. The Faustus Project. An actor makes a deal with the devil. This new version of Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus features a rotating cast of brave guest performers taking on the challenges of a devilish ensemble. One problem? They've never rehearsed with the rest of the cast. And Alone. On a failing spacecraft, 2 female astronauts fight to save Earth. This heart-racing, multi-award-winning sci-fi thriller explores survival, climate change, human resilience, and the silencing of female voices in STEM. As time runs out and tensions rise, this intense, captivating, heartfelt show asks, who will save our home?
Born basically out of my obsession with the 1979 Gene Wilder Wonka film, and also a lot of nostalgia for the book as a kid. But I just rewatching it as an adult, I was like, there's so much here. And this was before the Timothée Chalamet film had come out. I feel like Wonka now has come back into the public zeitgeist, which is probably to our benefit in terms of tickets, but like nobody was talking about Wonka at this time, and I was just kind of chatting Cadence Air off, like, you have to really consider like what did happen to Veruca Salt after that happened, and like how can you say that these kids deserve this, and kind of like obvious talking points, but it kind of just got funnier and funnier the more we engaged with it, like with total seriousness.
Courtney Bassett is an actor, director, and writer from New Zealand, based in Edinburgh. She's the artistic director of Half Trick Theatre and star of the multi-award-winning internationally touring sci-fi drama Alone. She makes work that is a little strange, unusual, and genre-heavy, while containing a strong emotional core. She has performed at the Edinburgh Fringe 3 years in a row, and in 2027 will be her 4th. Previous credits also include the sellout Ed Horror Fest show, The King in Yellow, which she devised, directed, and starred in. She has performed with New Zealand's prestigious Auckland Theatre Company, as well as many productions at the beloved indie darling of Auckland, Basement Theatre. She holds a master's degree in screenwriting and a morbid fascination with all things dark and fantastical. In her free time, she plays Call of Cthulhu and is a proud letterboxed addict. Courtney, welcome to What the Fringe!
Hi! Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And of course, I butchered Cthulhu, and I am showing off that I don't know games.
I was really thinking, it's really crazy that I chose to put Call of Cthulhu in my bio generally. So, we're both having some learning.
Okay, good. We're like, what just happened to us in the reading of the bio?
I really was like, we're going to come in strong with that. Because I think most people would say, I play Dungeons and Dragons, another nerdy tabletop role-playing game that's like more comfortable for people to say, but I was like, no, we've got to be honest. It's not just Dungeons and Dragons.
You're like, I'm niching down, man. Like, this is what I'm into.
I'm trying to find my people.
Exactly. And everybody, and that's why I had to correct myself, because your people would be like, that girl didn't know what she's talking about. She didn't practice. Done. We've discounted her. So I apologize to all the fans. Okay. How we got connected. I was telling you before we got on air that I feel like I've hung out with you, but you've never hung out with me, because I've seen you in a couple of your shows last year. So your company submitted to our World Fringe Day episode with the Faustus Project, and I thought that looked really fun. And so I went to go see that in Edinburgh last year, and it is one of the wildest shows like I've ever seen.
It's the fringiest of fringe.
Yes, it was I nominated it in my awards for best comedy and then also fringe as fuck, because
yeah, I really feel the fringe as fuck.
Yeah, I was like, for the people that it's for, it's like, you want to go see the show. Your little conservative old ladies or whatever, we call them in the South, they're pearl clutchers, not for them.
Yeah, it is a show that does have people walk out. quite often, I will say. There's people screaming and loving it, and then there's also people just like quietly shuffling out the back door thinking, this is not Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus.
Not even close. But for the people that it's for, it's like, it's so much fun. It's like such a fun show. And then I was saying you hoodwinked me because at the end of the show that I saw, so I saw the one with Linus Karp. I hadn't seen him in anything. I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, he's great. He does the Princess Di show.
Yeah, big fan. And so after, everybody, thank you so much for coming. You stood up and you were like, you guys should go see this show alone. I heard it's really good.
The way I have no memory of this. Did I say this on stage?
Yeah. After the show, like everybody, like, thank you so much for coming.
I must have thought I was being funny. I must have thought that people knew. But no, I mean, I'll take it. I must have been tricking people. Fringe brain is a different brain.
It is. And I think you were like half dressed at the time too. So there's, we'll give you some grace there. I hope I didn't give anything away.
Well, that's the thing about Faustus. It's different every night. I'm not always in various states of undress. Every single show is so different because it's based off the performer's consent form. So sometimes, like, nudity isn't on the table at all, but other things are, like, we've shaved heads. Things change a lot. So whenever somebody recounts a story of them seeing the Faustus Project and they're like, this bit, I'm like, oh, yeah, that happened once ever. But to you, it's a canonized part of the show,
Absolutely. What I saw was like, oh, this is how it happens, and they just plug the person in. It's a lot more improvised than... It's
plug and play, but we have so many different variants for different comfort levels, so like different options, but kind of like a choose your own adventure, but so beforehand we have a very big briefing where we go over the performer's consent form. The gimmick is true, the performer does not know what's going to happen. They have signed off on everything and anything that they theoretically could be okay with happening, and things that they definitely aren't, and then we never touch the things that they aren't. But there's also a lot of red herrings on the form. I won't say what the red herrings are in case there's any prospective Faustuses. So yeah, we've got these different, it's kind of like modular that's come in and out based on who's in.
Well, I do improv as well, so like I get that. Some people are always like, don't they know? And you're like, no, they don't. That's part of the fun, is that you don't know. I've gotten off on the Faustus Project, but it's so fun. But you hoodwinked me into seeing Alone, and I had thought about seeing it, and there was another space show, and I was kind of going back and forth, and I was like, this person said it was good. This half-dressed person said I should go see Alone.
It's me on the poster. Is
it you? No, I thought it was...
No, it's me. It's me on the poster.
Your hair is brown on the poster. It looks brown.
It's just dark. I think I'm just in space.
I thought it was your...
You thought it was my cosmate. So maybe that's the joke I was making.
I've seen it, and I was like, this isn't Courtney.
You were like, what a trick.
I also thought it was a solo show. And so I showed up, and I'm like, is it two-hander? And anyway, I show up. And I thought I saw you, which I thought was your partner. Anyway, and I was like, oh, she's in it. But then I was just sold on the show. And this is not a half trick show. This is one that you guys do with Alchemy Theatre out of Paris. And I loved it. It won Best Drama, nominated Best Directing. It's just a beautiful, absolutely beautiful show. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of you, Courtney.
Primarily because I've tricked you into it. Is what I'm hearing.
Basically, yeah, that's what we're trying to say. Is you half tricked me into it. Okay, well, let's get into this. Let's talk about your journey as an artist. So you grew up in New Zealand, and how did you get into the performing arts there?
I think like a lot of performers, I kind of got into it properly in high school. Auckland Theatre Company runs this very good youth program, and so my first like semi-professional experience was through them doing like a spoken word poetry show. So I also fancied myself a bit of a poet when I was 17, as I think a lot of 17-year-olds do. And that kind of led into more acting, and then I was part of the Young Auckland Shakespeare Company, and I think that was like probably the most definitive moment in terms of like, oh, acting is something I want to do as an adult in my career, not just a hobby, because that performance was like gender swapped, Much Ado About Nothing, and I got cast as Benedict. And Auckland had this thing called the Pop-Up Globe, where this company built a life-size replica of Shakespeare's Globe in like a car park in Auckland City. It was nuts. It was a crazy different time in terms of arts funding. Maybe that was privately funded. I don't really know. But yeah, it was insane. They had this huge one-to-one replica of the Globe. All these different companies got to go in and do Shakespeare in it. And I had, for the first time, and I was like 19, 18 at this point, got to perform the role of Benedict to like 1,000 people in the round, and I was like, oh, this is like crack. Like, I can't come back from that now. And then, yeah, the rest is history. Just like hustle, audition. And since moving to Edinburgh, it's definitely been about making my own work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then what drew you to Fringe after kind of taking that traditional theater route, which I'm sure most of us did? What took you there?
Fringe for me was like an amazing discovery because I'd been lucky enough to do some Fringe theatre in New Zealand, but obviously the theatre scene and the festival scene is a lot smaller there because we're a smaller country. And that had been good fun, but kind of just another avenue. And Alone, actually, 6 years ago, just before COVID, was part of the New Zealand Festival Fringe for just a couple of days. And I believe, I can't remember the name of the award now, it might have won Best Drama, it might have won Best Theatre, but it won an award. And I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. And we got invited to perform at Edinburgh Fringe, basically. Then COVID happened and we were not able to do that for a good few years. And then by the time COVID restrictions had lifted, my director and the writer, Luke, was like, by the way, this is still an open invitation. Assembly would still like to program Alone. And at that point, I was very burnt out on the New Zealand theatre scene, so much so that me and then my soon-to-be theatre company, but at that point, just my flatmates, my partner and my flatmates, were like, you know what? Let's all go to Edinburgh and we'll get youth mobility visas and Courtney will do Alone for a month and then we'll just travel around the UK and see where we want to live. So we all did that, which was nuts and like the biggest life step I've ever taken, like in my mid-20s. And we all moved here. I did the Fringe and I was not prepared. Like, I had been told, obviously, but I think a lot of people can relate. Like, when you first show up at the Edinburgh Fringe, you're like, how is this real? Like Comic-Con, but the whole city and for theatre. It was amazing. And I had such an amazing time. And we had such an amazing time that me and my partner, Caden, who's the co-artistic director of Half Trick now, but at that point it didn't exist, we were like, we really need to bring something to this festival, like, even if we don't end up moving to Edinburgh, which we did, but we're like, we need to come back to Edinburgh and do our own show. And we'd already done the Faustus Project in 2017, I believe, at the Basement Theatre in Auckland for just like a short little season. And we were like, that would be a perfect show for the Fringe environment, because we just had like local actors and local celebrities star, but it wasn't a Fringe. And we were like, oh, it's perfect for Fringe because people can promote their Fringe shows. So that kind of triggered the idea of like, we need to start a company that embodies that. And also me and Caden share a love of like early modern and Elizabethan works and retelling and adapting those. So from that, Half Trick Theatre was born, literally out of my flatmates that moved overseas to come to this Fringe festival. So that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but yeah, basically we moved to this city because of the Fringe. So now I feel very intrinsically involved with it.
That's amazing. So in other parts of the world where Fringe are, especially like in the United States and in Canada, because I'm in North America, Fringe is really like hyper localized. About 50% of the acts are local. Usually, that's my just estimate of most festivals. There's lots of different reasons why people do Fringe, but for local companies, there are companies like yourself that develop out of their Fringe, especially like in Minnesota. There's a ton of companies that do that. I have another company in California that they run a long season, and Fringe helps them kind of launch what they're doing, helps them get awards so they can write grants. They don't tour, they just do their local Fringe as kind of part of how they're building their company. And so it's really interesting to see Fringe provide that kind of platform. And I'm like, that's happening in Edinburgh too, because you think of Edinburgh as being this place where everybody comes, but you guys moved there for the Fringe and then developed your company around that. And you are like locals.
Yeah, I feel like a bit of an imposter sometimes because like we have lived here for 3 years, we are locals, but like I noticed the other day Waiting for Wonka got plugged on Gilded Balloons Instagram or whatever, and it was plugged under the titles of Scottish shows, like homegrown Scottish shows, and I'm like, you know, hopefully one day I can lay some sort of claim to that, but I still feel fairly fresh into my immigration status to be And obviously I've made friends with a lot of amazing local Edinburgh Scottish theatre companies and emerging artists who very much are Scottish shows. So to see Half Trick alongside, I'm like, yes and no. But it is true. I think it is a really different, nice feeling to be a part of this city. The feeling that I have living here as opposed to that first year where I very much was a tourist in this city is so different. It's crazy how it recontextualizes the Fringe and also makes you very aware of its negatives when you're not just viewing it as somebody who's there to do the festival, but also as somebody who lives in the city.
Like the impacts on the community as the negatives that we as tourists don't see. I mean, because I know a lot of artists could come up with pros and cons for every festival, right? But yeah, it definitely impacts the city. And then if you were to estimate, like how many local companies are producing at the Fringe that live in Edinburgh? I'm so curious.
Hundreds.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's not exactly a high number. I mean, I'm pulling that number out of my ass. But I think when you consider that there's like thousands of companies that come to the Fringe, because it's the biggest Fringe festival in the world, so we're looking at like 3,000 festivals. I mean, in terms of Scottish artists, easily hundreds. In terms of Edinburgh artists, I'd say at least 100, especially when you consider all of the one-man shows, one-man comedy acts, you know. I could probably rattle off 10 Edinburgh emerging theatre companies right now. It's just that not all of those shows, unfortunately, are in the financial position to be able to be at top 4 venues, so to speak. You know, you will see a lot of local art at places like The Space or Augustine's. Waiting for Wonka had its debut season in Augustine's, which is literally like this beautiful local church. So I think there's a lot there, but you kind of have to want to seek it out.
Yeah, it's exciting because it's like, especially if you're a young theater maker, I'm going to do the Fringe in my hometown. My hometown happens to be Edinburgh.
Yeah, I'm always talking to my friends now who did grow up here, and they're like, oh yeah, we did the Fringe for high school. Like, it was our high school show. And I'm like, that must be nuts. To be like, my school drama project when I was 16 was to do a show. And I actually saw a show, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but I saw a show that was devised by a group of high schoolers, was their high school class, they were getting marked on it. It was great. But I was also like, how crazy to be doing like avant-garde devised studio black box theatre as your entry point to theatre. You know, I hope it stays that exciting for them for the rest of their acting careers.
I know, you're like, you're not doing Lion King.
I think it's awesome. Oh, to be that drama teacher, you know, what a fun gig. Go away for a month.
She's like, I'm going to have my school pay for all my creative devising projects with the kids. This was brilliant, actually. Way to go, theater teacher.
Oh, and speaking of, actually, we had a school group. They were doing a show. I unfortunately didn't get to see it. I think they were doing The Wizard of Oz. But we had a school group in droves see Alone, one of the like first days, and that was amazing. Like, they all stuck around afterwards. You would have think it was like a Disney meet and greet. It was huge ego stroke. So excited to meet me and Anthea. But they're all just like, oh my god. I remember one of the teenagers being like, I didn't know acting could be like that. And I was always like, that's the nicest compliment I've ever received.
That's so sweet.
So I love when school groups come, and Fringe is pretty good for that. Hopefully we can get some more school groups along.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot of performers too. I was talking to another performer from the UK, and they were like, yeah, Edinburgh is basically the closest Fringe to me. And I was like, oh. So they're like, I'm there a lot. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, and then for the rest of us, we're like, it takes us thousands of dollars just to get there. And, you know.
It's a huge cost.
It is. I mean, housing alone.
You know, having originally come from New Zealand, I can't even in good conscience say how much I personally had to spend that first year when we were staying at an Airbnb. We were staying at an Airbnb with one bed, and there was 4 of us. At different points, we all got, like, pneumonia, maybe COVID, I don't really know. It was insane. But I have, like, a lot of nostalgia for that time, too, which is maybe just, like, romanticizing the abuse. I genuinely think the cheapest way to do Edinburgh Fringe is to live here, because it's the only way you can guarantee you're not getting a rent spike.
Yeah, well, and I stay at, like, a dorm, and then this year I'm staying in a dorm, and they're pretty reasonable for what you're getting. So you can find good housing.
But then check out those dorms prices not during August. You learn to accept what it is, but it's not always like that.
That's fair. Well, let's talk a little bit about your projects. We've talked a fair amount of Faustus Project because it's so fun, but I want to talk about your new show, Waiting for Wonka, and you're moving into a new role in this one because you're directing it. So I'm going to have to come see it because I'm a Courtney Bassett fan and see how your directorial hand is, but I have a feeling it's quite good. And you wrote it as well.
Yes, I co-wrote it with Caden. director of the Faustus Project and Mephistopheles and the Faustus Project. We co-wrote it in COVID times, long before we'd moved to Scotland. Born basically out of my obsession with the 1979 Gene Wilder Wonka film. And also a lot of nostalgia for the book as a kid. But just rewatching it as an adult, I was like, there's so much here. And this was before the Timothée Chalamet film had come out. I feel like Wonka now has come back into the public zeitgeist, which is probably to our benefit in terms of tickets, but like nobody was talking about Wonka at this time, and I was just kind of chatting Caden's ear off, like, you have to really consider like what did happen to Veruca Salt after that happened, and like how can you say that these kids deserve this, and kind of like obvious talking points, but it kind of just got funnier and funnier the more we engaged with it, like with total seriousness. I think a huge influence on us was like Succession was coming out weekly at that point, and we also started to build this idea of like this was the succession to the golden tickets, and the other kids failed, and Charlie kind of got to step up to that throne, and what would that adult dynamic be if you kind of thought of them as adult siblings. And so we ended up writing this whole play, and it just sort of sat there. Basically, because New Zealand has very complicated parody laws, you kind of can't do it. You kind of can't do a parody.
You can't do a parody?
You can, but it's quite complicated. Whereas, in both the UK and America, there's quite a lot of laws around, like, it's a parody, it's a satire, we're obviously not.
You can get away with so much here.
So much. It's a lot more complicated in New Zealand, especially to do as like a fringe piece of theatre or a emerging piece of theatre. So it just kind of sat there, and then we did a development season of it last year. So much fun. I was so happy we did it. So it's been simmering away for a while, but it's basically my on-stage fan fiction. For any fanfickers that may be listening. That's very much what it is. It's like a kitchen sink drama meets like slice of life fanfiction, but it also takes entirely seriously it would be really traumatizing if you got turned into a blueberry. So it's a comedy and a tragedy.
Yeah, well, I mean, Roald Dahl is quite macabre.
Yes, and I love it for that. But I also think I've talked about this before with this play where I'm like, as much as I love it and I love the source material so much, I think I do take like an outright political stance against the idea that naughty children don't deserve nice things too, or that like naughty children are inherently bad. And then also you've got to consider even the sillier stuff, like what does Roald Dahl consider naughty? Chewing gum. I mean, like, when's the last time you got annoyed at a kid for chewing gum? And adaptations are always kind of cursed, I think, like the musical, or adaptations are always, I think, trying to justify what happens to these kids by adding traits. So, they'll always add in that Augustus Gloop is actually also really rude and nasty and a bully. That's not in the book. He's just fat. That's his crime in the book, or, they add in that Violet's competitive. But in the book, she's just, like, happy to be there, likes chewing gum, is too talkative.
It's been a while since I've read the book. I probably read it when I was a kid. You were like, people weren't talking about Wonka. Like, Wonka has been a part of my life from day one.
For sure. It's a huge part of, like, childhood nostalgia.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, I always view that, and of Roald Dahl as well, of the nasty adults and how that impacts children. And so then you've got these kind of atrocious children that are that way because their parents are awful. And so then now you're exploring themes. I don't know if this is what you get into. Like, how much do we hold the kid responsible? And then how does that impact you as an adult? What are you responsible as an adult for who you are, and the trauma or the bad influence that your parents have put on you. And of course, this traumatic experience, like you said, being turned into a blueberry. Oh my gosh, just because you had a mom who was competitive or whatever and made you that way. It's kind of interesting. This is like totally my show.
Oh, you're going to love it. The parents definitely very much come up in the show. And yeah, to Roald Dahl's credit, like one of the original Oompa Loompa songs is like, who's to blame, the mother and the father? Like, that's definitely a theme. But I think also, like, on a symbolic level, I was very interested in, like, well, who is, and this is where it totally goes into fan fiction, or not fan, our version of it, the idea of Wonka as a parental figure. And what Wonka might have been like as a parental figure for them for that point onwards, and for Charlie, like what was Charlie's life after that yippee moment, like what did that actually look like? And then also definitely themes of like a critique of capitalism and the wonder of materialism, you know, like, hooray, I get to inherit a factory. I get to run a factory. That's the big exciting prize. I think there's lots of fun things to explore with it. But also I just find it quite funny. I've always really enjoyed taking children's media too seriously. Like, at one point I was seriously considering doing a PhD in like children's literature. Like, I could write a thesis on Captain Hook. So I'm always interested in like retellings of these like classic nostalgia. Wonka at this point is almost like nostalgia bait. And I feel like talking about big adult feelings with these things that we associate with our own nostalgia and our own childhood, hopefully can help us think about our own fucked up childhoods.
Right? Well, and it's interesting that you're like, I take children's stuff seriously, but you think about the stories are there because it's good for kids to imagine and to experience the world through stories, through books. Now, of course, you know, media and television is a big part of that as well. But you think about like, that's what's shaping their minds. And so I'm like, children's literature should be taken seriously.
It's so formative.
Yeah. I have 2 kids and, you know, you think about what did I read them when they were little? How did that shape how they think? Of course, environment and, you know, the house that they grow up in as well. And then I have one kid that is a huge avid reader and the other one is quickly becoming an avid reader as well. And it really shapes kind of how they think and who they are and the kinds of things that they're drawn to. And so I think it should be taken seriously. Go get that PhD in children's literature and then write a bunch of weird plays about it.
Absolutely. I think Waiting for Wonka is especially exciting to me because it definitely feels like my baby is up there on stage, or maybe my like nightmare prepubescent teenager is up there on stage. But there's a lot of personal investment in the ideas in the show, so much so that it's kind of hard for me to articulate, you know, when something's that personal, which sounds so silly to say about what I say is basically a glorified fanfiction play. You'll get it when you see it.
I will. This is what we get to do as theater makers and as fringe makers, right? We're like, I'm going to go do my weird thing and care a lot about it.
Just trust me on this.
It's so good, I promise. Well, and what's the difference? So is this one of your first times with your company kind of just sitting on the writing, directing end and not performing? And what is that like?
I've done a fair bit directing and performing at the same time, which I consciously made the decision not to do here. Because with this play, writing it for me, my entry point was Veruca Salt, and thinking about her life and going from being like super spoiled and a daddy's girl to like what a potential loss of that would look like and what happened to her and her family afterwards. So that was like my jumping off point. And when I was writing it, I was definitely like, and I'm going to play Veruca Salt. But then the further down the line I got with it, I was like, actually, I feel much stronger about the bigger picture here. And having done some directing and starred in the show too, that is a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work. And I often feel that the result is that my performance is the worst performance because it's very difficult to direct yourself. You know, I can look at everybody else and then I have to fit myself into that scene. Like I did that for Antonio's Revenge and for The King in Yellow. Both great shows, but I feel like I've learned from that where I'm like, I can just not be in it. And it's really fun. It's like watching my dolls run around. I kind of liken directing to like playing with my Polly Pockets. With some sensitivity and care towards my Polly Pockets, moving them gently, but yeah.
You have such a childlike spirit. I love it.
It's a very nice way of saying that.
Oh, I know some other performers that are like that, and it's absolutely beautiful and wonderful, and it's a thing that we lose as adults, but that we as necessary as a theater maker in particular, is we're doing a bunch of make-em-ups. Like, we're like creating a little story.
We're playing pretend. It's not that serious, you know? The thing that's always drawn me to acting, and it's probably why I bother to include something like playing Call of Cthulhu in my bios, because to me it's all the same. It's the act of playing pretend, getting together with a group of people, a group of adults that all consent to be very silly and play pretend. Like, that's amazing and a blessing.
Right? It's great. I'm sure it's like very serotonin releasing and good for your body, good for your soul to just play and create. So, yay. Kudos to you. I'm going to push you to get that PhD. I'm super excited. I'm like, what other stories can you go mess up?
So much.
Okay, is there anything else we need to say about Faustus Project? Is this would this be your second or third year with Faustus?
This will be the third year of Faustus at Fringe. Faustus Project. What else is there to say? Should be good. All new guest stars. Yeah, I can't stress enough how different it is every time. I know a lot of shows say you can come again and again, but we do have a couple of Faustus fanatics that have seen it a good few times, and they're always like, oh my god, that was so different, and comparing it to this and that.
Yeah, so come see it again. See it for the first time or see it again. It's going to be an absolute wild ride. Do you have all your guests lined up?
No. Much in the spirit of the Faustus Project, it's very, like, it can be very down to the wire finding the right people, because a lot of people can't really think about their Fringe schedule until it's already happening. There's just so much booking. So, you know, sometimes we'll find out a couple of days before, okay, this person's doing this day next week. Definitely in talks with some people, but nobody has been announced yet.
Well, if you need some North Americans, I can hook you up with some people. So exchange there. Oh my gosh, my brain is going, you need this person, this person?
Genuinely, send them to us, because our producer goes through them all and makes a little selection. And we got to have a lot of them.
Right, because you have a different person each night. And you do, what, 28? How many shows are you doing?
This month, we're only doing, I believe, 11, maybe it's 12 shows. We're doing a half run. So it's Wonka in the beginning of the month and Faustus in the latter half.
Okay, great. And then you're doing Alone the entire run.
And then I am doing Alone the entire month, yes.
Okay. Fabulous. Fabulous. Well, we have a few minutes. Let's talk a little bit about Alone, just because I absolutely loved it. And I want to encourage Luke to, I don't know if you guys have done it, but to make it into a full length, I would love to see it a full length to anybody who, the 5 people. It needs a West End run. It needs a Broadway run. It's just, I think it's a really important piece of theater. I think it's done really well. I could see it as like a 2-act show. I'm fan fictioning about your show.
People have a very strong reaction to Alone. Alone actually already and originally was full length. It was 90 minutes. And the first time it played at Fringe, we did the 90-minute version. And then we were like, we need to cut this down and make a Fringe version just to fit everybody's schedules, really.
It's hard to sell a 90-minute.
It is, like, an hour and a half.
I'm not sitting through that.
Yeah. It was originally longer. Last year was the first time we've done the cut-down version. So it's been through a lot of iterations. But yes, I am always Alone's champion. Alone needs an international tour. Alone needs a West End season. And I really feel like it is one of those shows that, yes, works at Fringe and could also work bigger. You know, it's as big as you want to dream it because of the genre stuff and the sci-fi stuff. But at the end of the day, it's also just a show about 2 people. I say Alone is also a workplace drama, you know? It's about 2 people at work kind of going through some unimaginable circumstances. But yeah, I'm very touched that you enjoyed Alone. It's always incredibly gratifying to me when people have a response to it.
Yeah, it's good. Well, I like all the work, and I'm excited to, I don't know if I'll be able to see Alone again because I've such a short schedule, but
Alone is the same every time. You know, you can see Alone once.
It's not like a comedy one night and a drama the next day. Man, okay, so you've got an exciting lineup at Fringe this year. I'm super, super excited for you. Really excited to see your directorial work sitting in the backgrounds doing that. Oh, but I don't know if I'm going to get to see Wonka. Is it it's running the first half?
Running the first half.
I'm not going to be there till the second part. Anyway, we'll see. I'll see what I can do. Okay, well, I mean, I could just talk to you all day, but we're getting close on time. So let me ask you my favorite question, which is, what is your most interesting, awkward, or heartwarming Fringe interaction that you've had? We've shared a few already, but share a good story to us.
Oh, it's tricky. Obviously, Faustus is like prime breeding material for interesting, awkward Fringe interactions. I can only think of ones that I like definitely can't say. That's not that interesting. I was going to say, I flyed Bob Odenkirk, and he was like, oh, my son would love this. I was like, that's the worst swerve ever. What I will say is, Faustus spoilers ahead. If you want to be Faustus, if you're listening to this and you want to be Faustus, turn off this podcast because you can't be Faustus if you know anything about Faustus. So this is your chance.
I'm plugging my ears because I want to one day. Anyway.
You saw it, so you can't be Faustus. We get that a lot. We get a lot of people seeing Faustus and being like, can I do that? And it's like, no, you know what happens. There's so many funny stories I can tell about the bugs in Faustus. So there's a moment with an insect for different performers, and the amount of, like, we once were putting on the show during Fringe and got a call at like this shows you Fringe working hours. We got a text at like 2 a.m. being like, are you killing an animal? We're like, well, that makes it sound maybe a little bit stronger than it is. And we're like, it's all in our tick writer. At 4 a.m. having a chat. with the venue, like, what's the situation? And we're like, yeah, you know, there's the risk of insect endangerment in the show. That's been a crazy journey. I'll always remember the very first time we did it in New Zealand. Me and Kaden, we just bought from the pet store like a jar of flies that you give to a snake or a lizard, and we were like trying to chopstick them out into like individual, obviously trying to keep them alive, and we had this was our first ever time doing it, and they all just went like everywhere. It was disgusting. And I was like, what are we doing? Is this theater? Is this just unethical? Which I think, but then the question, is this theater or is this just unethical, I think is the entire question of the Faustus Project. I've eaten more bugs than I would care to, you know, have eaten in my life. It's the journey that's taken me on.
Well, and it's like, what makes it gross? I mean, I know it's not live bugs, but I've seen people eat live bugs. Or I go to like there's an insect museum, and you know, cook them up and you eat them. And it's like, is somebody going to go out and swap? Well, I don't know if they have mosquitoes in Edinburgh, but in Texas, you know, you're just like, and you hit a mosquito and kill it. And what's the difference of walking out of the theater and slapping the mosquito versus putting it on stage? And maybe it's just because it's performative.
Because it's for entertainment. I genuinely, without sounding like a wanker about my own work, I genuinely think it's an interesting philosophical question, and that's why I think it stays in for us, even though it can cause quite a lot of drama. We've had reviewers give us very low ratings just because of that, going, well, there are no shows worth a life. That was a great quote that I wanted to put on a poster, because I'm like, that makes it sound like we killed Faustus. No shows worth a life. And I'm like, that's interesting. That's interesting coming from anybody who chooses to eat meat. But that's a whole other conversation, you know, like, is art worthwhile? Is, you know, what ends that justify means, I think, is the whole theme. And I also think there's a really nice, nasty moment in the audience where the audience divides, and half of the audience is chanting, kill it, and half of the audience is like, this isn't okay. And I'm like, well, we've got angel and devil right now. Like, it's one of those moments, many of which can occur in Faustus, where people are pushed to like a very awkward, uncomfortable state. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay that it's not a crowd pleaser, you know, it's uncomfortable. It's fringe.
Well, it's theater too. Theater often makes us uncomfortable. That's fascinating. Oh my gosh, I could talk more about this, but anyway, we're out of time. But Courtney, it's been so great to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had so much fun chatting away, rambling.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Oh, you're going to have a great season. All right. Well, if you want to catch any of these amazing shows that we talked about, they're going to be playing at Edinburgh Fringe this year. Waiting for Wonka is playing the first half of Edinburgh Fringe at Gilded Balloon Patter House. And the Faustus Project is playing kind of that second half of Edinburgh at Underbelly Cowgate, Belly Laugh. And Alone is playing the full run of Edinburgh at Assembly Box. You can learn more about Half Trick on their website at halftrick.com and keep up with them on socials at Half Trick Theater. What the Fringe is produced and hosted by me, Lauren Hantz. This episode was edited by Ben Ellis of Renowned Media, and those sweet tunes you hear provided by Paul Snyder of Orchestra of Sound, and our logo was designed by Ruby Arnold of Ruby Makes Things. What the Fringe can be found on your favorite podcast platforms and on YouTube, so be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know when new episodes release. Keep up with What the Fringe on Instagram at whatthefringe_productions and find us online at whatthefringe.com. Let's just all admit that sometimes we like to make it seem like we're doing better in ticket sales, and we're like, yeah, I've sold like 1,000 tickets to my shows. And everybody's like, in a 50-seater? And of course you have to backtrack and say,
I mean, I'm pulling that number out of my ass.